At the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.
And good evening, all. How is everybody tonight?
Doing great.
Doing wonderful.
Chat is a bit light to start tonight, but I suspect this may be because I did not realize this. Apparently, Sony is doing some massive, PlayStation game drop thing.
I would know nothing about that. I still have an Xbox 360 I play Skyrim on. That's all I do.
Oh man, I probably should know something about it if it's happening, but there's the gaming space is so large. I do digital games on the other channel, so now I'm curious what's going on. But
It's basically, so I was watching. Apparently, we're the only people on YouTube not streaming the PlayStation thing.
That's funny.
So yeah, they're doing previews of everything that they have going for 2025, and I was watching a little bit of it before I jumped in here, and they all look like either Final Fantasy or what was the other one I was thinking of? Most of them look like Final Fantasy.
Okay.
But then there was one other that it's like they just cut and pasted. They're like, oh, this is selling well. So
the 18th remake of Final Fantasy VII or whichever version it is now.
I think indie games are the future of gaming, so I try to keep more of an eye on that. So
yeah, as Big Ship said, so far at least the ones I caught, all but two of them look terrible.
Okay.
I didn't even catch the second one because I only saw one that looked that looked good at all. And that's because it looks super creepy, and I like super creepy. So
very dark. I did not know that about you.
Yeah, pretty much everything I run is like a really like Call of Cthulhu is too mainstream horror for me.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. So
okay.
I am not a fan of Call of Cthulhu myself, so you are not allowed in that boat. So
I mean, I don't mind playing it, but I mean, everybody knows kind of what to expect with Call of Cthulhu, and I want all the things that people aren't expecting. So I do a little sci-fi horror, I do a little fantasy horror, I do a little, post-apocalyptic horror.
Okay.
All the weird stuff.
Don't they literally have a fantasy Cthulhu? Isn't that what Dark Ages is?
I don't know. I will have to ask my friends that are more into it than I am. I've actually been trying to get somebody to do Call of Cthulhu. Oh, hey. The Real Life Fake Wizard and their viewers just joined. Welcome! Welcome to all.
Hello.
The Real Life Fake Wizard.
Oh, the Real Life Fake Wizard is awesome.
I've never seen him before. I just really thought the name was funny.
You should check him out. He's very entertaining, and his little shorts before he does his actual videos are hysterical. So
yeah, I've only seen a couple. But I enjoyed them.
Yeah, he's great, and he just passed 19,000 subscribers. He's been
that's awesome.
He's picked up 2,500 subscribers in the last 6 weeks. Whoa. I'm extraordinarily jealous. It's awesome work. Anyway, so games. Night Harrow, if you want to just give us a quick little rundown on introducing yourself, how you got into gaming, what your role is.
Yeah. I've been, tabletop games I got into pretty young. My sister is 10 years older than I am, and she had a boyfriend who was going off to college, and he gave me a box first edition, second edition, 80 books, and he was like, "Yeah, I can't take these with me. Here you go." And I had been playing before that. That was just the first time I got given it. I don't know why they let me play with them. Again, I don't know if she had to babysit me or something, but I started really young, probably too young to participate fully at the table, but that's where I started with board games. I've been playing digital games since maybe not as I know there's going to be people older. There's always somebody who's more old school than you, but since MS DOS, like having to type in command lines to get the program to work, still with GUIs. And one of the things is I thought that I knew a ton about games, and then I started trying to cover them professionally, and I realized the space is so much larger than what I thought and what I thought, oh, I know so much about games, and it's like, wait, no, I haven't even heard of some of these games that people are like, no, it's an amazing game and it's been out for 20 years, and you're like, oh, okay, a little imposter syndrome, but that's where I got started. I just love games, tabletop, digital games, whatever it is. I like games, and I think they've added a lot of positively to my life and to the life of my friends.
All right. I do want to say quickly, we do have one more panel member who's going to be joining us. Unfortunately, he is filling in for us, so he got an hour and a half's notice and was not able to leave work early because of that. So Jester Boris will be coming back to talk about Essence 20, which he discussed a little bit the first time he was here, and everybody seemed interested in. So,
Cool.
And Hunter.
Yes, I am Hunter, aka the Ultra American TTRPGer, is what I like to go by on my socials. So call me Hunter, call me Ultra. I respond to both. And so my start with the TTRPGs was actually, to surprise most people, was not with D&D, which always blows people's minds when every time I say my first game wasn't D&D. In the year of our
It
Lord and Savior COVID-19,
it it always makes me very happy to hear that.
that's good. So in the, as I call the year of our Lord and Savior COVID-19, when that was happening, I was a single father, living with my parents, stuck at home, newborn infant, and just going insane with being stuck in the house all the time. So I'm scrolling around on social media, and I'm trying to figure. I'm just trying to get my mind off everything, and I come across this ad for a game, and that game eventually became my first love of TRPGs, and is one I still play to this day. City of Mist, which is it's a variation of the Powered by the Apocalypse system, so it's a 2d6, but but as it says on the cover, it's ordinary people, legendary powers. And it's so you're in a modern day city, normal person imbued with powers from like monsters, legends, mythological figures, historical figures. You can think of it. You can put into
Hi,
action, basically.
why don't we hang on to that for your actual thing so that
Fair point.
you're
Sorry,
not
I got ahead of
no,
myself
that's
already.
I do that all the time. I get so excited about a topic I really love that I just kind of
I
I
got, I
just
got
kind
some
of
I got some questions for Ultra American, but maybe I should hold them off though.
if they're about City of Mist, then yes.
No.
Yeah.
I Ultra American. I want like, are you a hell diver? Like, what's going? I want to tell me more.
uh,
So, like, oh,
I have
Or is
a
this going
about
to get
me?
into or is this going to get into something we want to stay away from?
So, so the reason behind my name is because it does involve topics that
We're
Eclectic
going to
Goat has
avoid.
told me
Okay,
we
no
can't
worries.
bring on the channel. So,
Sure.
but that does play in a lot of that. But I do play all sorts of different TRPGs. Like these three cabinets that are above my head, all
Okay.
full of different TRPG books. So when she reached out to me a couple weeks back, I sent her a GIF of someone unrolling a long scroll, and I said, "Which one do you want to know about?" So,
Cool.
yeah, I had never heard of City of Mist, and then all of a sudden it popped up on like my socials everywhere. So I was like, oh, it's got to be that one because I've never heard of it. So I am obviously the eclectic goat since we have lots of new people here. I like to talk about all the things that everyone else overlooks, the games people have never heard of, the television shows people never watched, and the authors that don't have marketing budgets and therefore don't get read nearly enough. So that's what we do on this channel. This is Slice and Dice, so we are going to sit around and eat weird pizza and talk about weird games. And for all of those who are here that are normally here, I did promise that tonight would be sweet potato and honey night. And I have to say that it's surprisingly good. Um, it's goat cheese instead of regular cheese, and it's sort of like eating a cheese pizza except like more buttery. Um, but it
Goat
doesn't
cheese, you
actually
cannibal.
it doesn't actually taste like anything else. So yeah, I don't know about pineapple on pizza, but sweet potato on pizza, yeah, thumbs up. I just
It's
want to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were about to stop, and I was gonna. My comment was gonna be, it sounds like it would be a really good like dessert pizza, and I would think like this kind of like with that sweet potato casserole, put some like toasted marshmallows on top of it too. Would be what I think about it.
I've never understood that sweet potatoes are so sweet on their own. Putting marshmallows has always confused me. So I'm going to go back through this. Big Ship, who is one of our regulars. Yes, we were not streaming the PlayStation thing, and we are delighted to have you here. Rio, who is also one of our regulars, delighted to have you back.
I like
And
I
then,
like I like Big Ship's dislike and unsubscribed, Goat. That sounds horrific. Uh,
is it because I don't like pineapple or because I do like sweet potato? I haven't gotten that. I haven't gotten that far yet. So we have some new people. We have Mega Roman. Uh, Ben. Ben has been here before. We're happy to have him back. And then we have Big Ben. John Mercer, welcome. Apparently is excited to hear about GURPS. So you came to the right place.
oh, awesome.
Then there's the argument about whether or not it's Hades or Hades. Prophetic we've seen before. Also delighted to have you back. Thank you very much. The Mighty Eraserhead is the super mod for this channel and many, many more. He is the best. Except maybe Melvin. Melvin is also a super mod, but he does my Monday show. So Eraserhead is the best for Wednesdays. Let's see. Anybody else that I have not gotten yet? Man, there's been so much conversation. the sweet we delved into the sweet potato discussion instead. Oh, John, sorry to see you go. Please do catch the rewatch, and we'll also have a slice and dice minis for the GURP section. Tomby is also awesome. Without Tomby, none of this would happen. He has set this whole thing up. He did the music, everything. Tomby is the man.
The music was great. The intro is really good. I enjoyed it.
Was that actually you singing that intro song? Was that actually you?
Oh God, no.
Okay, I was about to say. I was going to comment. You say that you have a really good voice, but
YouTubers, you got to have a lot of disparate skills, and apparently singing is on the list.
No, I wish. I would love to be able to sing like that. All right, I feel like I've forgotten something horribly important, but it apparently can't have been that important because I don't remember what it is.
You can always
so Night Harrow, if you would like to start with GURPS.
Sure. I'm sorry. What exactly am I starting with? Just talking about it. I love GURPS. I could talk about GURPS all day.
Well, I mean, you can't have all day, but you can have half hour. You can have a half hour easy.
Sure. GURPS is it's an acronym. It's kind of funny because it started off, there was not a name for the system that they were developing, and as kind of a joke, they called it generic universal role playing system, right? So GURPS, so it's an acronym, and then they never found a name for it, which is kind of funny. Also, you're like, come on, nerds, but GURPS stuck. Now that's what it is. Now it's certainly, to me, it has warm feelings. I don't know if it's the best marketing, but yeah, the idea behind GURPS is that there's one system that that's very modular. I mean, again, I guess we could just walk through the name, right? So it's generic. You can use it with any system, any setting, and what have you. Generic and universal. I don't know. Somewhere in there, you're talking about system. Somewhere in there, you're talking about setting and everything else. And so that's the idea behind it. And then obviously, role-playing system. It comes in many forms, so you can get like GURPS Lite from just download it for free to try it out or what have you, and you can play it ultra light. So, as an example, you can have wild card skills, which are literally like, hey, I just write down, let's say rogue if we're talking about maybe traditional fantasy, but it could just as well be like detective, and then you can roll against that skill. It's a roll under 3d6 roll under system. So the nice things about a lot of roll under systems is you add all your modifiers usually, and then you're just trying to roll under that number, so everything's kind of added in, as opposed to like, okay, I got a modifier here and there and whatever else, and you're adding in a lot of things each time. You can play sci-fi, you can play horror, you can play traditional fantasy, you can play. That's the whole idea. A lot of people, some popular IP and people that play GURPS, Peter Dinklage, not Peter Dinklage, I'm sorry. I was thinking Game of Thrones, but who's the writer of Game of Thrones? Peter Dinklage is my favorite actor from Game of Thrones.
George Martin.
Thank you. George R. R. Martin plays GURPS. There are plenty of
If
other
only
people.
he'd stop playing GURPS and start writing.
Yeah, yeah, right. I won't hold my breath. I'll say that. So someone who plays GURPS, the Fallout series was actually based on GURPS. That's what it comes from. Timothy Kane, you can actually find him here on YouTube. He was one of the original people that worked on that from the Elder Scrolls series, the same company that made that, also made that series. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's my short spiel. I've done a review on GURPS. If you'd like to see one, Homebrew Tabletop, you can go watch it there if you want like a full breakdown or what have you. But I'm happy to talk about everything else. A lot of people ask you about stuff and you're like, I did this, really tight video where like I packed as much information in there as I could. So I'm going to miss some stuff as we're chatting today, talking about what have you. But yeah.
I can't remember if I mentioned, but Tom Kane, who wrote GURPS Egypt, GURPS China, Espionage, and one other that I can never remember.
Yeah, you had him on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was on the show.
Yeah.
And for those who have been here before, this is the game I occasionally mentioned that I am no longer allowed to play. So.
Oh no, I feel like there's a story there.
The story is I really like to try and put weird combinations of things together.
Okay.
And just to make the game more interesting. And I end up breaking Game Masters because of it. And
sure.
The first time, and the only time I was allowed to play GURPS, the Game Masters really wanted me to play, and I was like, I don't know that this is for me. And he handed me the book and said, I will let you play anything. And I was like, really?
I mean, that's the kind of the cool thing about GURPS is that you really kind of can do that. I mean, obviously, with anything, the more complicated it is, the more easy it is to break. I find that breaking things, I mean, I don't know. You might be on a different level. I'm not trying to, but I find with a lot of stuff, breaking it ends up not being as bad as you would think sometimes with with your home group or what have you. I'm not saying that there's not, random strangers at a con, maybe so you got to get a problem player, but we play GURPS and one of our friends, he plays a very strength-based character and he's absolutely broken. He does tons of damage, what have you. And it's kind of like, nah, cool. We just send, or he plays some other character, it's like, no, we just send Tharnet in whenever we need to, someone to regulate, and the rest of us are good at other stuff, and it's kind of fine. Everybody still gets their chance. Just my 2 pennies on some of that stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I never intentionally break things,
Sure.
and I don't tend to do. I don't know. Occasionally, I'll do something like really strength based, but in this particular case, I just crammed everything into charisma and proceeded to pit the entire party against themselves.
Okay.
But it was totally in character. So, Prophetic, are you calling me the Voldemort of TTRPGs? Because that might be really flattering.
I just had the Harry Potter Pepper House, the Voldemort, ooh, Voldemort.
The funny thing though is that I really like players that like to try and break games too. Because they kind of keep. I mean, not the ones that are just plain old jerks about it. But there used to be a guy. First game I ever ran, actually. There was a guy who joined games just to get himself killed in the most interesting way possible and mess the whole game up for everybody.
Okay.
So I gave him an immortal character.
I mean, you know, having someone who's just there to make memorable experiences for everybody else can be a lot of fun. I have a friend who often does that. He always comes up with these wild characters, but you know, it if as long you know as long as you're in it for the fun of everybody else, I feel like it always works great. You just got to remember that you know, you're all there to have fun and play together. So
Well, the funny thing in his case was that he was not there for everyone else's entertainment, but
okay.
it turned out he was just really insecure about his ability to roleplay. And that once he got an immortal character and could no longer fall back on, trying to be the funny man, he actually got really, really good.
Huh. I
So,
mean, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I feel like that's one of the really cool things about TTRPGs is, you know, I know I mean, probably all of us, right? We're all huge nerds and grew up without the social skills so much. And, you know, it's a place where you can learn and hopefully I feel like I'm still learning, you know, how to interact with other people and, be a little bit more comfortable in your own skin for sure.
I completely relate to that. I was diagnosed autistic when I was 4 years old, and even in my 30s now, I still struggle with social cues and all that. That is not a struggle that has gone away. So I completely get that
Yeah.
entirely.
so
Yeah.
I was not chuckling about lack of social skills. I was chuckling because Wormy Spoons has now joined us and asked if he missed the discussion on how wrong pineapple pizza is. Would
Well,
anyone
I would
would
say
would anybody like to clue him in on how much more horrible it's gotten?
it's not. Pineapple pizza is wonderful.
So, Wormy, what we instead discovered is that I tried sweet potato pizza tonight, and it's actually pretty good. And I think I'm horrified. In fact, I think like 10 people just left the stream as soon as I said that the sweet potato pizza was pretty good.
Oh man.
But Eraserhead hasn't, threatened me yet, which he usually does about the pineapple thing. So, what are your favorite? Because I mean, there's the GURPS core book, but then there's like tons of supplemental material. What are
Yeah.
your favorite? What are your favorite supplements?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say about a lot of the GURPS supplements, and some of this is you could say is a criticism of it in some ways, is that so GURPS has two core rule books, and the page numbers are consecutive, so they're kind of treated as one book. They're just split up, and one is more for players, the other one is for GMs. Although the second book is really the first book is about character creation, the second book is about kind of everything else. A lot of the supplements, and I have most of them. I have many of them, not most of them. I don't know. There's a ridiculous number, but I've been playing for I don't know 20, 25 years or something. And you know, the thing with the supplements is in the current edition is that a lot of them just simply refer back to the basic set, which is what the basic set is the two core books in GURPS. And you know like the cool thing about that is that everything is contained in the basic set, and that is really in two books. That's everything you really need to play. You know, as far as I really like GURPS powers. So again, there's a million supplements, guys, that cover everything. You can cover modern weaponry. There is like martial arts. One of my, actually, I don't know. I was gonna say powers, but now I'm like martial arts and um, low tech are also pretty high up there. So low tech gives you a lot of info about like medieval weapons and stuff like that. And the core set is really a simplified, which is funny saying anything about GURPS is simplified, is a simplified version of things. You have one type of sword essentially. Low tech gives you a lot more crunch if you want to also have sieges and you want ballistas and stuff like that. There's stats for it. And then, and also with like if you want to get into having fluted plate mail, right? A real thing. So basically if you make, little peaks and valleys in plate mail, it adds to the strength, right? Because it's not a flat piece. This is just basic structural stuff, right? So you can have that. How much weight does that add, and whatever. You can obviously go as deep or as shallow as you want as far as the mechanics of it. But that's what you have in low tech. And then for martial arts, I mean, come on, I don't know. I grew up watching some cringe, TV. I mean was it the 80s or early 90s, I think, where like maybe it was 90s, I don't know. But there was a time there in America where like it was like White Guy Ninjas was so big, you know. And so there's a lot of that in there, but some of it's like really actually really good. Adds a lot of crunch again if you want that technical fighting, ground fighting, stuff like that, MMA stuff, and a lot of it's really all both those books are incredibly well researched. The reason I started to say powers is because powers really gives you the kind of explains more of the framework if you want to make an ability in GURPS. And again, that's the that's the whole thing, right? You can homebrew, you can make anything you want in GURPS, and you can create from scratch an ability, anything you want. Like you could make some up right now, and we could come up with the rules for it. And I find that to be very useful in my current, I guess, iteration or current campaigns. So yeah.
So, GURPS powers, is that like strictly superhero type power things, or can you
Um,
like tack some of those onto other?
No, I actually use that in fantasy a lot of times, really. So if you want to have somebody, so I mean, a weather mage, right? But Storm from X Men is also kind of a weather mage, right? So it's just really like how do you want to go about it, and that's the generic and universal part of it. You can really tack that onto anything. You could say future tech with psionics. You could also structure, and our group has gone to that a lot with structuring our magic use for traditional fantasy around using the powers rules. So if you wanted to make a fire mage, you have fire is obviously kind of your domain, and then what you can do with that is kind of layered on and how you figure out the point cost. And it simplifies things a little bit where someone like myself who has a lot of experience can kind of go in and make the ability for the character and say, okay, like one of our players, he's a water mage, he controls water, and he's also a ranger. He's like a ranger who's very concerned about waterways, and he can do some stuff with water, and so it's like, okay, cool, that's his domain, and then we just we figure out what he can do. Well, some of the things he can do is shoot out a water jet that might knock someone off their feet, stun them, what have you, and you can just kind of go on and build up from there.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
And since we're talking about supplements, and I asked this because I know this one exists because I owned a document for it. Have you seen the GURPS Furries supplement?
Oh no, I haven't.
I
Oh, that's
actually
funny.
have it on my phone. The only reason I know is because this was the first time I was introduced to GURPS was watching a YouTube channel where they do a Let's Make Us a Character series. They did GURPS and they made a character from the Cowboys of Moo Mesa show where they made one of those cowboys
Okay.
for that.
Uh,
And then they did
that's
another one talking about this GURPS Furry supplement, which is like how to make like a humanoid animal character.
okay.
So I
That's
didn't know
awesome.
if you knew that existed or not. I just figured that would
Oh
be fun.
Was
no.
was that actually through Steve Jackson, or was that like a parody thing, or parody
Uh,
third party
I
thing, or something?
believe. Hold on. I got the document right here. Let me look it really quick. Because I believe it's got his. Yeah, it's got Steve Jackson Games plastered on the front of it.
Yeah, there's a ton of supplements for GURPS, and it's the same thing. Like I think I joked about when I was reviewing it. That I know. I mean, you asked me those questions, right? I could talk more in detail. Thank goodness, I guess, about that. I wasn't as kind of a subject matter expert here, I suppose. But even with that, like there are people that know plenty more than I do, and there are also entire like books because I'm doing it for fun, right? And if I don't need a book, I'm not necessarily keeping up with every single thing that they've done. But there's just so much content, and Steve Jackson Games is very protective of their IP, but at the same time, there's a lot of community stuff that has been made that other people who have hey, I don't know how they've worked it out, but there's a lot of stuff that exists, I think, because people really like GURPS and they help create it more than I think a lot of other games. So it's really interesting, even though they're perhaps
She found it.
that's awesome.
And so it's not written by Steve Jackson, but if you go to the next page where it has the author is actually an employee of Steve Jackson Games
Okay.
himself.
Yeah, I found it on the Steve Jackson site.
Okay. Well, there
Yep.
you go. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too with GURPS that I think a lot of people maybe don't realize is that in some ways, like you mentioned, powered by the apocalypse system, right? So for those who don't know, the Apocalypse system is a game system that's been developed. There are many others out there that different companies use and what have you, and different licenses for them. And in some ways, while GURPS doesn't necessarily license out their rules and what have you, you do find kind of the same thing where it's like, for example. For GURPS, there's like a dungeon crawl, right? Version where it's not really meant for role playing, and it's just made for like really powerful characters that are munchkins and just go into dungeons and kill things and cause problems, and that you could argue is a different, even though it uses the same rules, it's kind of a different experience. And you might have something like furries. I don't know. There's Wild West supplements. There is. I learned recently there was like a whole Discworld book, and so some of this stuff gets into the point where, even though I don't think GURPS people would say that it's the same as like having a different um, I don't know, idea IP or whatever, but still using the same rules, like a Powered by the Apocalypse system or something like that. But it is borderline that, I think, to an outside observer.
Aren't they revamping the Discworld book? Because I believe there was like a brand new quick start that was
Huh.
uploaded to Drive Through RPG not too long ago. So I believe I've been hearing that they're going to either redo it or re-release it, and I believe it's
Oh,
still using
okay,
the GURPS rule system for that. For what I call, I'll have to double check. This was like a while back. I heard this, so
okay. Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but that doesn't necessarily mean a ton. Again, there's a lot. I don't know if you guys try to keep up with all the different games out there. I try to, and usually the inbox is full with what everybody's coming out with. So
yeah. With the circles I run through, I'm keeping up with like all the stuff of like what companies are doing, what games are getting released. That's something I do. So
yeah, yeah.
Do we have any chat questions?
Oh man, fire away! Somebody's going to give me something like crazy hard. See if I remember a page number or something. If
I
I've
mean,
got
if they start getting into page numbers, that seems a little.
Okay, if I've got a 600-pound Minotaur and I'm moving at my current velocity is 8 meters per second, how much damage am I doing? And the answer to that is it basically doesn't matter, because in GURPS, the rules for charging are kind of not very great, and they're a little bit unrealistic. uh, gosh.
Grim
Do
Peppy
I,
says, "Yes. Who are these people? I know nothing. That's what happens when you come in late and you miss the introductions."
Hi, I'm Night Hero, and I'm a huge nerd.
I'm
Uh,
the Ultra American TTRPG. I'm also a huge nerd.
and Lord Toxic has you aptly labeled, apparently.
Oh yes, split up nerds indeed. Lord Toxic looks like a lifter too. Lord Toxic, I did a video on strength in TTRPGs, and you look like you might be someone who's interested. Check it out.
I have no idea if this is a serious question, because Azar is somewhat facetious occasionally, but I wonder if I can play a human that wants to play act being an over-the-top glittery elf, one who thinks he's an actual elf, which weirds out all the actual elves in the party of elves they meet.
Real or not, I can answer this. Okay, so of course you can. So you would take delusion as a disadvantage. So one of the core parts of GURPS is you have advantages and disadvantages, and disadvantages give you back points to spend on more advantages. But a disadvantage is not necessarily something that's bad. It's anything that limits your player choice. So if you want to play an obnoxious paladin, right? Remember like old school paladins, like you couldn't retreat unless you were outnumbered X to 1 or something. So a dragon is one guy. So in old school D&D, you couldn't retreat. You could make that in GURPS, and that would be a disadvantage because it limits your player choices. Or, for example, if you're honest, that's also a disadvantage in GURPS. Being honest is a disadvantage. Now, true disadvantages are also disadvantages, but that's just kind of how it works. So you would have a delusion where you actually thought you were an elf. Now, that delusion could be something that you're kind of quirky. You're just like, if I dropped into chat and I was like, "Hi, I'm Night Hero and I'm an elf, sparkles," and I like drop some glitter, that wouldn't be too big a deal. If I was always, if this was like the fifth time I brought it up in the time we were chatting, that would be a more serious disadvantage and would be worth more points, negative points, so that you could spend on other things. And typically in GURPS, you have some sort of guidelines whenever people are making characters on like how many points in advantages and how many points at disadvantages to give you more points to spend on more stuff. So you absolutely could. People play modern day, people play themselves, people play modern day, but like, a twist or like, oh, you make yourself as a as a person, and then like the GM has something happen. Maybe you're caught up in a government conspiracy. Maybe you're playing the Bourne Identity and you didn't realize you were secretly a sleeper agent or any number of other things. Glue on pointy ears.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
So
Can you actually like play somebody who had a mental health issue that they thought they were an elf? Like, would that be a huge disadvantage?
Well, that's what I was trying to explain. So, if it were not that big of a deal, and you were just like you weren't like always telling everybody, right? Then it would be like a negative 5 point disadvantage, which is not bad, or could even be what you call quirk level, which is like a -1 point, which is just like I don't need to tell everybody, right? We've all met that person who needs to tell everybody that thing that nobody really cares about, whatever it is. Um,
Wait, you can get disadvantage points for being vegan? I'm sorry, did I say that?
yeah, no. So you absolutely can. Totally. It's funny because I live in a very in an area where there's probably a lot of people that are like that, that are vegan or vegetarian or what have you. So first off, it's a social disadvantage if you're just being obnoxious. So you can literally have something where like whatever it happens to be. It's odious personal habit, right? Like if I'm sitting here the whole time and I'm picking my nose, probably I get some minuses to social reactions from people. Okay. So that would be an example. But if you actually have a dietary restriction, that's a different kind of disadvantage. Yeah, you can
Well,
make anything in GURPS.
I think what I was trying to figure out is, would it be more of a disadvantage if you actually had a mental health issue, or
so
if you were just being an obnoxious jerk and pissing everyone off?
So the way things are tallied as far as points is it depends on how it's going to impact play. So for example, if I think that I'm an elf, but that doesn't ever really matter or come into play, that's probably like a quirk. If it comes into play, so if you say you're a vegan, but that we're never going to have to deal with diet issues or like you finding food for you. So my wife is a vegetarian. We like to travel, and when we've gone to developing countries, that's not really an option. So she has to prepare herself by preparing, by slowly getting used to meat again, for us to go on vacation to some of those places because they don't understand that, like, why would you not eat meat? And so for that, that would be a real disadvantage. But if it's never going to come up in play, it's not that much of a disadvantage. You can have gambling addictions. You can have any kind of addiction. Like there's rules generically for that. And the question is, how much is this going to impact your life, and how much is it going to come into play? All of those you can have. It's just a question of, is it a -1 point, a -5 point, a -10 point, a -20 point? One of the things. Am I answering your question, Goat?
Um, I think so. I feel like they both impact, but in different ways.
But
I
yes, you
mean,
can have mental disadvantages. You can be any number of things that anything you can think of, physical, mental, whatever. Absolutely. So if I'm not answering the specifics, the answer is yes, though. Absolutely, you can. And if you don't want those to be things that are like an actual, if you want to overlook them or whatever in play, then you would just put it as like kind of a -1 point, like a quirk of your character. Um, and there you go. I mean, you could even have like bigotries and any number of other things, right? Like if you're the dwarf who your dislike of elves is a problem for the group, like you could do that if you wanted to in your. Again, it's a tool. GURPS is like a toolbox. It's like a really big. It's I joke that not even a toolbox. It's kind of like being in a machine shop, and you're like, yeah, we've got a like a programmable lathe over there, and we've got a laser like, we've got a water jet cutter, right, to cut through inches of steel. We've got all this stuff, and it's just a question of like, what do you want to do with it? So,
somebody wanted to know if the fourth edition vehicle book is out yet.
oh, that's a good. I don't know. I don't usually get those kind of emails to check, and if I have, it's probably. But I bet we could look it up real quick. It sounds like Goat is. One of the things too with disadvantages is actually one of the problems. I can't tell you the number of times where I've had to tell somebody at my table, like, "Hey, like they want to make their own character." Most of the time, I help them, or we help them make their character because it's a lot easier. Because the making a character, if you're not someone who really enjoys that, which I am, and other people are, right? But if you're not one of those people, then it's a lot. But if you are one of those people, it's like, cool, yeah, just let me know and I'll give you some guidelines, what have you. And they come back and they've got someone with a bad temper, no sense of humor, and they're also like a giant, like monstrous creature. Okay, so it's like, okay, I can't tell you. One guy wanted to be like a Weemick type character, and it was just like, so he has no sense of humor. He has a bad temper, and then he like goes berserk or whatever. So it's like, okay, dude. So the first time you walk into a bar, someone's going to say something to you jokingly. You're not going to understand. You're going to take them literally. And then you're going to get really pissed off. And then you're going to go like into, a berserking rage. And you're huge. So you're just going to murder everybody. Do you understand how this is going to be a problem? Like, I'm fine killing off your character by having, a local militia dispatched to come kill you. But your character's not really going to last that long if you are all of those things to a very serious degree. That's the other thing is that, you can have things where it's like, well, I have a bad temper. You can have that set. There's actually dice numbers, so you can always choose to fail a roll and say, okay, I get angry and I get mad. Sure. But if you want to be like, well, this is an inappropriate time for me to get angry. Can I roll to see if my temper is a problem here? You can assign dice values to help you role play and to help you have a chance. And if you choose something that is, the harder it is, the more likely you are to go into a berserking rage or whatever, the worse that disadvantage is. And so therefore, the more points you get back to spend on other things. Hence, you see min-maxers who want to be this big, strong character. Oh, I'll just be angry all the time. That's not a disadvantage. It's fine. I'll just dump some points there, and
That's the secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to catch up with chat here.
Yeah, they are quite active. Ran a game where someone took bad temper, bloodlust, and chronic pain. I mean, at least they have a good reason for having a bad temper.
Yeah.
I had a game once where the GM required us to do a whole bunch of stuff really randomly. And I ended up being the party fighter and slightly angry just because I was, I think, an orc. And I was the only person in the party who could not speak to anyone else in the party because I rolled badly on languages.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And what the party didn't know is that I was also a were-hippo. So every time they did something that made me angry and I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
We had to, and that one was not my, well, I mean, the were-hippo was my choosing, but the not being able to talk to anyone was...
So, I have to know for what's the word I'm looking for accuracy, though. When you say were-hippo, as in, like, you go from an orc to being, like, a full-on hippo? Or, like, you become, like, a humanoid hippo?
The game had multiple forms, so you could go pure hippo, or you could go, like, berserker, two-legged warrior hippo. So, were-hippos actually, there are stats for that in the old D&D. But the general rule was that that were-hippos are so violent that they're almost all trolls, because only trolls can survive an attack. An attack by a were-hippo.
Okay.
And occasionally orcs.
Because hippos are dangerous IRL, right? They're one of the
very.
Oh yeah, in real life they're one of the they're one of the most dangerous animals. But but yeah, it's it was interesting trying to balance like the fact that I wanted to roleplay accurately, but I also did not want to wig out and murder the entire party in the first game.
Ja here is talking about I ran a game where someone took bad temper, bloodlust, and chronic pain. Yeah, I could see that being a problem. It's less of a problem if they're not like a 400 pound like killing machine. But yeah, I mean, depending on how much role playing you want in your game, I guess too. But yeah, Joe, I could see that being an issue.
All right. Do we have any other questions from the chat on GURPS? Grandpappy said he was going to go lurk because he hadn't played GURPS yet. So
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to sell GURPS a little bit more because I don't know if I did the best job. And again, the review is like my best thoughts on what I thought was great about it, or what I think is great about it. The main thing is that you have flexibility. I know for me when I played D&D, growing up, and I got into GURPS fairly early because I got to play with a lot of older guys that were into different TTRPGs, is that you can make the character you want. I know that, I got given that box and I was young. I used to read those things like religiously, and I had pages memorized, right? And, and it gets to a point with a lot of class systems and what have you that you can be like, oh, cool, you ran into somebody and you're like, yeah, okay, cast this spell, or I can see this thing. Then I know that this is a X level wizard, X level fighter, whatever, and you know a lot about them. And sure, a lot of people are like, well, the GM needs to, if they just customize stuff, it's like, yeah, but even then, you kind of know what's going on a lot of times, unless the GM is just doing everything from scratch, which is a lot of work. And so GURPS, too, the other side of that is I want to make a character that I want to make. Well, making a fighter that can throw a fireball is yeah, you can dual class in class systems like D&D, but it's not the same. And the level of custom. What if I want to make a fighter that can throw a fireball and can also pick locks, but I also want to be level like starting out. I mean, to some extent, you can do that in GURPS much more than you can in any other system that is not of a similar. There are other systems, but there's not a whole lot. So it being and I guess I didn't even explain this, but it's a point buy system. So you have points and then you buy abilities. It's a la carte, and as long as your GM allows it and it's fine, then you're absolutely fine. You can kind of do whatever you want that way.
okay. So we're about to take a big leap of faith here. Jester is with us, but I don't actually know if okay, he can hear us. We're going to find out if we can hear him.
Mic test.
Hey,
There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Woohoo!
Excellent. Everything that could go wrong went wrong on Monday, so we're all set then.
Yeah, the platform here wasn't giving me good feedback about my microphone, so I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. We had an issue on Monday where somebody couldn't even get they could see that they were in the chat, but we couldn't see or hear them at all.
Yay,
So,
technology! Yay!
I was a little concerned. I was a little concerned that was what we were running into, but no, everything seems to be great. So, thank you so much for jumping in at such a last minute. I really, really appreciate it, and it's good to have you back. So,
Absolutely.
if you want
to, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a Jester Boris with I Want to Be a GM. We do a lot of events, hosting. We ran Christian County Library's summer program last year for TTRPGs. We were just recently opened a game store, and I myself have been gaming for longer than I probably should admit to. Gray in the beard, but that's how it goes. So,
can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Finish your spiel. I'll follow up.
Well, I was going to follow up on your stuff there, Night Arrow, for GURPS. There's a lot of additions. One of the things that's pretty cool with GURPS is that if you don't play GURPS itself, it's a fantastic resource for anybody looking to expand into their games. So Cyberpunk was a standalone game. We talked about that the last time I was on. There was a Cyberpunk set of rules for GURPS. You can do sci-fi, fantasy. There's a lot of different things, and so if you're looking to reflavor something or draw some inspiration, find something that's outside of the box you put in, like we talk about with Dungeons and Dragons being having a very sort of rigid almost framework compared to some of these systems like GURPS. You can find ways to break out of that and add a little bit of freshness if you pick up some of those GURPS source books or other game system source books along that genre that you're looking for. The strength of GURPS is that it is a framework, and so it can take any wild concept, and there's a way to realize that and get that character into your stories and then go through those storylines. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was going to follow up and ask you. So I don't know about I Want to Be a GM, Are you guys an organization that does a lot of different things? Are you? Tell me more. Can I, if you don't mind?
So, we've been doing this for about 4.5 years. Locally, we work with a lot of local game stores, and we do things like workshops where we're going to get new players on the table. We're going to run them through something crazy. All their characters die, and then that seems sad, but it's really the segue that we use into now we get to make your character because you guys were playing all of my characters, right? My pre-gens.
Yeah.
So now we get to go and have this high adventure, and you're killed by a dragon, and that was amazing. And then
So are you guys kind of a GM for hire kind of operation or
we do a
nonprofit?
little bit of that too. It's so there's a lot of facets. We've got a once a month podcast we run over on our YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, we just recently opened a physical game store to add to the ecology of game stores in our local area. And we worked with Christian County Library System last year and ran their D&D summer program. A lot of kids and families, so a lot of teaching and one shots. We do event games. We've got some pretty cool stuff. Check this one out. Adventures in Babysitting. We run that one. It's a 3 versus 3 D&D game that we do at conventions a lot. So if
Nice.
you ever want to see something crazy, watch a hero lose their mind trying to get a 2-year-old just to go to bed. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. We do a lot of different things, but it's all around gaming. And the idea is we try to bring people into the hobby that are interested and make it accessible. We also have a charity that's 417 Game Sidekicks. We support accessibility in gaming by bringing people into gaming spaces where they may not have necessarily been or had felt welcome or been able to participate before. So, like I said, a lot of things.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Thanks for the longer explanation for me.
Sorry about that.
I think I
Yeah,
saw you
I don't mean
on.
to like drop,
No, I
but
think
I
I
have
saw
to
you on one of the
establish a
other.
little bit.
Yeah, I think I saw you in one of the other episodes, and I missed the intros. I was just kind of clicking around. So yeah.
Yep. So one of the things that we all enjoy, though, is the old Saturday morning cartoons, right?
Yeah.
If
Hmm.
you didn't grow up with them directly, you've probably seen reruns, the toys in the toy aisles, and all that sort of stuff.
And if they
Um,
haven't yet, they'll remake them all.
oh, they have, though, because
I'm more.
they've got a power and a force like you've never seen before.
Hey everybody, Justin Boris here, and
Hey, he's checking it out. Thank you very much. But
Oh,
they've
gosh.
also
Auto
got the
playing in the
ability to
background.
morph and to even up the score. So what I've got for you guys here,
Oh man. Heck
yeah,
yeah.
a lot of. Oh no, I see you sighing about this one. Let's get some
I
people in.
have major
Here we
issues
go,
with the Power Rangers one, but you go ahead and continue.
for sure. How about this one?
I've only seen the Power Rangers one, but I know about the others. So
Let me see. I got all this stuff falling down here because I can't stack books appropriately. And then this one here.
Yeah.
Transformers. You can be more than meets the eye. So these are reprinted by Renegade Game Studios using their Essence 20 game system. Get this turned around here.
Yeah.
And what's neat about that is you can run any of these as a straight game, or you can mix and match. For those of you who are fans of the G.I. Joe or Transformers franchise, you may have seen where they've mixed them up in comics before. And so, of course, the Decepticons hanging out with Cobra, G.I. Joe finding some support from the Autobots and Optimus Prime. That's kind of cool. Mix the Power Rangers in there for good measure, and you've got just a lot of room for campy, goofy Saturday morning cartoon board game. So
Okay.
I think the biggest advantage to that, though, is the system itself. Have you guys seen the Essence 20 system at all?
that's the issue I have with the games. But yes.
Tell me a little bit about your issues here before I lay them out, so we can kind of address those. Because it's a
So
neat system. It's D20 based, and then the skills are die based. So you get your skill potency is based, D4 through D12 kind of thing.
yeah. So I only own out of all the games they've released. I only own the Power Rangers one. I bought that like when it first came out because I was like, oh, Power Rangers. Just bought it off that whim. And I tried to read, and this is partially, I guess, kind of my own fault because I love my more simplistic and rules light systems in comparison to other games. And I was thinking like, oh, this should be easy. I tried to flip through it. I could never get to the character creation because it's so complicated, and I don't like it when they spread out character creation through multiple chapters. I've never liked that when a system does that. And so again, most of this just personal issues with me that I have with the system. And I've also had other friends, they said they tried the system and they were just as confused with it, trying to get it to work sometimes and all that too. So I'm not trying
Running
to
it,
knock it down or anything
no,
or
you're
at all.
correct on
So
that though. Like I said, so the books laid out are a little funky, particularly when it comes to Power Rangers, because you have to create your person, and then they treat
mhm.
your ranger like a class. So we're back to dealing with classes and levels. Um, so you could be a fifth level blue ranger and then transition into yellow ranger. That's sort of how they treat that. So picking your character, your background, the things that make you who you are and affect your stats and abilities, and then you apply your character class on top of that. It's not very well explained, and it did take me a minute to successfully create a character. Um,
Mhm.
so that that is a valid criticism. One of the things you will find though is full color art throughout the books, and then they've got free PDF downloads of all the materials, relevant materials, and you can even find PDF downloads for like Cobra Commander, Optimus, and all those here. But I'll take a look. Did not have much time to prepare. Sorry about that. Or I would have had a PDF of the character sheet, and let me know if that's clear because the book's in front of my face. Clear-ish.
It's up close. Hang on a second. Let me.
Sorry.
There we go. No, that's all right. I'm
There
just
we go.
I'm blowing the screen up so it's much more visible.
Whoa, blowing it up. Oh, there we go. So we got 4 primary attributes, and all the skills sort of fall in under those. And the dice system, like I mentioned, it starts with a D2, ranges all the way up to a D12, and based on your skill and specializations and things of that nature, you'll be able to improve your die for a particular skill. One of the things that I think is a big advantage to this system is that it allows the party members to come together in interesting ways. So if I'm driving and you've got the GPS, you can add a bonus to my drive die and actually raise me up a die level through your assistance with a GPS unit. You can tell me which way to go, and hopefully it's not like the 1990s GPS where we take a left now and end up in a field or off a cliff. But lots of ways to be able to um, cooperate both mechanically and narratively to be able to build into the system that cooperation that we'd like to build at the table when we get these gamers together and we're trying to encourage role play and we're trying to get the party not to just obviously we're superheroes, right? Bumblebee, Optimus Prime, or any of the Power Rangers by themselves um, are sort of superheroes, so you want the team to come together and be able to solve the problem and win the day. And I appreciated that there were some mechanics that allowed for that within the skill system.
I think sorry Ultra, I cut you off, but I just want to say
You're
that
fine.
the concept of like teamwork and that actually being core and like worked into the mechanics of a system, I am a huge fan of. I think that that is one of the things that's lacking, especially for new players, because as experienced players, you kind of already do this. You know how to do it, and whether it's gamified in the rules or whatever, sure, or codified, whatever, however you want to say it. That's fine. But for a new player, understanding how I can help the group and participate, I think is huge for getting people into TTRPGs. I don't know the systems that well. They're on my list.
They're definitely worth checking out. And for what we do when we're talking about new players or trying to get people into something, you're like, okay, maybe you don't connect with Arthurian legend, Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah.
all of the high fantasy that is D&D of a traditional sort of role playing game. One of our observations actually is that while I might have been influenced heavily by Lord of the Rings and things like that, the people coming up behind us in the hobby, their big film set, their big book set was Harry Potter. And so they have a different perspective on magic and heroes and those sorts of things than what we might have had. Even if they made Gateway eventually, into Lord of the Rings and that sort of stuff, Harry
Yeah.
Potter is often what they grew up with, and so it's a bit of a different approach. And I like the idea of GI Joe. They fired a million rounds every show, no one ever dies. Part of the fun of being Power Rangers is making everybody do the posing. you know. So we're like, it's
Get you
morphin' time.
more
You
stuff
throw
for
up.
kids.
Oh yeah, well, hell, like I said, we play at events. You get people my age, almost 40, shouting "It's morphing time" at the table in the middle of the con floor, and then everyone's like,
Yeah.
"What the hell's going on over there?" So, so
It's
just
and
just any of that
it's
stuff is a
honest.
gateway.
It's
Yeah,
honestly a really good thing sometimes for younger people to see older people willing to put their ego and everything else aside and just be goofy.
for sure, and it provides some context that allows you to learn role play, right? Like, okay, I've seen Power Rangers. I kind of understand Power Rangers. It's a bit goofy,
Yeah.
but I can be a Power Ranger. And then I can sit here and okay, I'm a Power Ranger. I've got my Power Ranger team. We're going to work together. We're going to beat up the monster. It gets giant. We get a giant robot. Everything's awesome. But when you get into, now I have some context. Now I'm understanding creating a voice, understanding what my character's needs and wants are, what my role in the team is, how I want to lead or how I want to solve a problem. Having that context eliminates a lot of the pressure new players will have when they sit down and like, okay, what's a thief? How do I do magic? Some of these other things that happen when you get a more complex system. And while Essence 20 can be more rules heavy, to Ultra's criticism of it, having that campier, lighter heart, sort of well-known context can be a great gateway for bringing people in, at least to be introduced into the hobby. Maybe as a game master running a one shot at an event, I'm not going to worry so much about all the ins and outs of the rule system because I want everyone to have fun, right? The goal of the game is to play and have fun and then get them to come back. And from there, once they land on the game, if it's GURPS or Essence 20 or any of the myriad games we've discussed, then digging into the rules, understanding how to build that character, and really create that role for yourself to engage with the story. Those are the things that we want to be able to have happen for our players.
I
So, I'm sorry, go
I just
ahead.
want to say I think it's really cool that anything that could get more people. I think if a lot of people just sat down and play TTRPGs, they would love them. And anything if
Mhm.
it's like, hey, you got to figure out whatever IP you like and like try that. I think that's awesome. Just want to say that.
I'm
I
really
think
hoping for a He-Man one, just
Oh
because
man,
it's so out there.
It's funny you bring up He-Man because I have a buddy of mine on another Discord part. He's working on a Phaser Rip fantasy game, so it's a fantasy but using the Phaser Rip hero system. But it's going to be like that '80s cartoon, action-packed He-Man hero type stuff is what he's working on. So that's kind of
Mhm.
cool that guy we brought that up. But anyways, just a thought.
For sure. As you get deeper into the Essence 20 system, particularly if you want to mix the worlds, here's how deep you can go. Okay, you can be a Cybertonian, which is a transformer, disguised as a pony, hanging out with the GI Joes in their stable. That's also a Power Ranger. And yes, as a Cybertonian, you can either have a Zord or be your own Zord. They've got weird rules for the way that mixes, but you can be all of them all at once, and that's totally allowable in the system. The way it meshes together is really kind of interesting. The challenge comes in from the game master standpoint. If you're going to mix the game up like that, to be able to tell that multiversal worlds collide sort of story, particularly if you're going to include um, My Little Pony, and then the newest release under the Essence 20 is a really cool podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, I'm going to drop it here. Welcome to Night Vale. Just got an Essence 20 setting, so that's some Lovecraft stuff going on there. And now, of course, we need to mix My Little Pony and Lovecraft because that's the most logical next step.
sure.
I mean that would be kind of amazing.
That's what I'm
So
saying. This is one of the things that's neat about flexible systems. So similar to GURPS, where GURPS has one core and you can overlay on top of it, this sort of has the same thing, just a little differently defined across the books that you'd have to end up picking up. Oh, what's this?
Ultra, can I ask a question? Is are you more in favor of like, or do you enjoy more rules light system, or is it just the particular way um, that the essence?
I do enjoy rules light systems a lot more. It's not that I don't like if like there are a few like maybe crunchier esque systems I do play from time to time. It's just you don't find me playing them as often as in like say comparison like a game like Shadow Dark for example. How simple that is.
Mhm.
Y'all will play those more than other ones. But if someone else is playing that game, I may or may not join depending on what's being played.
I had a question about the the crunchiness, because I mean there are some games that are just plain old crunchy, and there are some that, so like the older editions of Cult, the character generation was really like clunky, but then the game itself, it basically did all the work up front, and then the game itself was actually really smooth. So I ran pre-gens a lot because I didn't mind the map. um, but yes, the the special guest has appeared.
Yeah,
Timmy.
this is Mishka, and she would not stop clawing my leg. So to save myself from bleeding all the time, I had to pick her up because she demanded it.
Well, that's all right. I'm actually amazed because mine knows when I'm about to stream and usually shows up and immediately tries to knock my monitor over repeatedly. So
Oh, she doesn't like your keyboard?
no, it's the monitor. She goes directly for the monitor.
I got you.
I am
Um,
sadly
Mishka
allergic to
just,
cats, so
so I was wondering, like, is it solidly crunchy or is it just player? Because what a lot of what's been discussed is like the character generation crunchy.
oh, for sure. So from a rules standpoint, it does get a bit crunchy. And again, as a savvy game master, you have to know when to allow the rule of cool and get your narrative across, have those cool game moments, and then when you want to dive a little harder into skills checks and those sorts of things. There's advantage and disadvantage, similar to what you might see in D&D, where you roll multiple dice and that sort of stuff. You can also get criticals, and both for success and failure. So there's quite a few aspects to the mechanics side of things when it comes to skill checks and even combat and that sort of stuff. For the Essence 20 system, that can be a bit of a detractor. It adds to the learning curve as you pick up the core of the game. Again, the context is nice to have something that some people might be familiar with, so you're not trying to also learn the world setting and also learn some lingo and also learn, you know, the what it is to be an RPG player. Get introduced to the hobby all at the same time. So Essence 20, from the standpoint of introducing a new player is awesome, but from the standpoint of the mechanics, it's going to be one of those things that does take some time to get a good handle on before you want to run it or before you'd like to play it all the time.
Yeah. The moving up and down dice is the kind of thing that I love on paper, like mathematically and the way
Hmm.
you would think it would work out. I often find in practice it to not be as smooth or as nice as it seems on paper. But I got to check
And
out the system. I haven't got there.
it is good on paper, and then you are right. In practical, you're like, oh, but I've got this thing, and Bob is over there helping me with this cool gadget, and then oh, but the car's on fire, and so when we want to jump the gap over the ravine, you're like, okay, can we just roll now? Can I
Uh
just
huh.
get on to what we
Yeah.
need to do? And then in that regard, it becomes kind of cumbersome. It's where fifth edition I think was really nice D&D, where we went advantage and disadvantage because I played a ton of third edition. I loved the rules, the feats and stuff like that, feats
Yeah.
and talents. But by that you're like, okay, I've got a D10 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 4. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not even dealing with this anymore.
Yeah.
You get to that a little bit with the scaling dice.
Well, and one of the things with that, I'm sorry, I'm really into rules and mechanics of games, Sayer guys. So
Oh
stop me
no,
if
it's
I
good.
get too nerdy.
oh
Um,
no, you're perfectly fine. I'm just listening.
Okay, perfect. All right. One of the things with, the idea of like I like the idea of advantage, but I much prefer Dragon Bane. So Dragon Bane, you're just counting up. You can get
Mhm.
multiple, you roll 3 d20s. The issue with 5e, the reason they can't do that is because the rules are all over the place. And what gives you advantage and disadvantage, there's 50 things and this thing gives you, and there's no real framework for a
Excuse
casual
me.
player to understand
Mhm.
what gives you bonuses and what takes away. And so then it's even worse than going up dice if you're now like, well, I've got, advantage, which gives me like, 3 extra dice from this, but then 2 extra, I'm losing 2 from this and whatever. And so, 5e just said, let's just keep this simple. And if you get both advantage and disadvantage, you don't get either. And it doesn't matter if you got 6 things giving you disadvantage and one thing giving you advantage. And that to me breaks realism a little bit.
It was a it was a hack way to deal with some of the mechanics they pulled forward, and it was good hack. When you end up with the same cancellation here in the Essence 20 system, but at the same time, the guidance on it from the book is like, as a game master, if you think it should be, if you want to give them a boost, if you don't want to give them a boost, you can give it, throw it to the council of players. And I'm like, hold on, that
I
just
find it.
slows the game down. So again,
I,
from running it standpoint, the Essence 20 system takes a little bit more work than something like Fate, something like GURPS, or even any iteration of Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. Oh my god, I can't see.
the point is being made that advantage is not helpful to those who tend to roll badly all the time. Anyway,
You got to
Yeah,
train your
Mail,
dice.
that is the poor that you're like, well,
Yeah.
my dice probability both says 1,
there
so
there are some people that just seem cursed as far as dice go. So my apologies if I missed this in dealing with all the technical stuff in the background here. Do you have a favorite of these?
Oh, Power Rangers for sure. That's what I grew up with. The 5 episodes where the Green Ranger gave the business to the original team were the best 5 episodes of that whole craziness. Rita Repulsa is probably one of the best, campy, goofy villains outside of the original Skeletor, for me. So it's definitely, when I sat down to play, would be Power Rangers for sure, just because I like, the license to be as goofy as you can and let loose a little bit at the table. Oh, there he is. Nice.
I've always
Uh,
rest in peace to JDF. I've always been a fan of the White Ranger personally myself, and these actually white dice, white and
Oh,
gold
heck yeah.
dice that I got in them. So yeah, so I've always wanted to do. When I got the game, I was thinking because Time Force was always my favorite Power Ranger series. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
had this whole idea for a Time Force configuration, so the Time Force kind of deal.
There's the source
And
book. Wait, where is it? Aha. There it
and
goes.
I just saw today they're working on a new source book for Shattered Grid.
Yeah, Shattered Grid was a. If you guys haven't read the comics, if you're not as giant Power Ranger nerds like I am, the Shattered Grid one is going to be really, really cool. It gets into a lot of the different things when they opened up the history, the lore, what the grid is, how it works, why it's important. To get that source book and to be able to maybe run through that storyline is going to be really cool. Um, there's a ton of different expansions now. So, for example, Transformers with Autobots. There's also a Decepticons. There's GI Joe. There's also Cobra. There's I think 4 or 5 Power Rangers books now that cover all the Power Rangers teams. You get even into different parts of the spectrum where they've got Quantum Rangers like Orange. Um,
Jester, can I
yeah,
ask?
go
Can I
ahead.
ask you a question about? Yeah. So when you're talking about, you kind of hinted on this, but I'm not sure I fully followed. When you're talking about My Little Pony, like the combination of these or GI Joe actually, they fire a bunch of bullets, nobody ever dies. Are the
Yeah.
mechanics in such a way that nobody ever dies, or how do you deal with those different genres and how they deal with win-loss conditions?
So the combat actually does have allowances for character death and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, One of the things I appreciate all through these books, the way Renegade handles this is, while the source material might be considered a little goofy or dated, they treat each of the properties with respect.
Okay.
So there's, they don't talk down about GI Joe, and they're not like, ha ha ha, this is so ridiculous. They treat the game and the property with some seriousness, which is kind of nice. We all know what we're getting into. We're fans of the different properties, so to have the books, give them a little bit of the fair treatment is refreshing. With My Little Pony, they have a different sort of way that they talk about it, though the mechanics are still the same within the system. Um, Let me see if I can find how they discuss it in here, because it's um, narratively, if you're playing My Little Pony, if I've got a group of preteen girls at my table defeating evil with the power of friendship, we're not going to be killing ponies. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Right.
Not unless I'm really, really trying to like sleep on the couch or something. But
That just made me think there's a 40K parody video where they're going around Ponyville just slaughtering all the ponies.
Oh no!
I was gonna say, so this is not the one where you combine it with Cthulhu, then.
No, you can, but at the same time,
I would play that.
well,
I
here's
want.
the thing. So, Welcome to Night Vale is a very neat podcast. It's done from the perspective of community radio, and all of the stuff that's normally weird Cthulhian stuff is there every day. So, it's like, so and so is seen coming out of the Arby's, which is strange because there's 1,000 ways in and no way out. That's like how they talk about it. And so, I mean, yeah, it's very Lovecraftian. And, as an example, gaining and using friendship points, page 118. So I could use the power of friendship to sort of navigate the Lovecraftian horrors. The first episode is great. They have announcements about the dog park. You're not supposed to look at the dog park. Don't think about the dog park. Don't talk to the hooded figures that are in the dog park. It's so as a setting, it's quite interesting, and I haven't been able to pick that book up yet. But as I double check here, is it knockout or is it? So that's Kit's jumping. So death is not even listed in the index for My Little Pony. So I got to figure out
So,
what it was that they said or how they talked about.
I mean, that makes sense, though. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
Power Rangers and you defeat somebody, they disappear in a shower of sparks.
Well, there's been
so
certain instances where Rangers have died, and so those different storylines and stuff a little bit heavier.
So this was actually a criticism from a friend of mine when they ran through the Power Rangers RPG, because it actually does say in the book that Power Rangers, they don't die. They're basically unconscious, and then they're put on kind of like a life support system until they regain consciousness again to regain their connection to the morphing grid. And they actually said that they wish that the game felt more like the comic book version, more than kind of like the kiddie Saturday morning cartoon type feel that the game goes for. Because
That
that's
sounds
kind of
like-
what they were wanting to do, was more
It's-
like how Boom Comics does Power
Yeah,
Rangers.
it sounds like Toon.
Yeah, a little bit. So primarily, what you'll end up with is when you reach 0 HP, you're unconscious until you can be revived. But that could also there's a it's been a minute since I've read these books. We did this program on Essence 20 earlier this year, but they've got an alt to that where you can die. I found here in the rainbow chart of happy magicalness. This is the scaling die chart. So if I can figure out, here we go.
Yeah.
So you can see it scales, and eventually you're getting into like auto success and critical success and all this sorts of stuff. To have a chart that covers the whole page kind of gives you an idea of what I was mentioning earlier, where depending on the bonuses and the sliding and this and that, it can get to be a little rules heavy in certain instances, even here in My Little Pony.
Okay.
Let
Interesting.
me try. Yeah.
I'm entertained that they even colored the dice. My Little Pony asked.
No. Where is it at? Did they put it in the book? The My Little Pony character sheet was my favorite because one of the pages is where you can. Ah, yes, here it is. Here it is. Where you can draw your pony.
Aw. This is great. I mean, the flavoring on this is. I mean, Renegade does great stuff.
For
in
sure.
general, so,
And then, of course, we have to have all the hearts all over the character sheet.
right.
So that again, having a game that's accessible for different audiences for what we do has been fantastic. And then, of course, the back of the book's got some of your pre-generated characters.
That's really fun.
Yeah, and the books, the RPG books have been getting more expensive, but Renegade really makes you feel like you're getting value. Full color throughout, lots of art, and that sort of stuff.
I don't think
So-
anybody in the TTRPG outside of Wizards is making a killing, so I think that's also a little bit where you're like, I mean, Renegade, what is one of the top 5 for sure.
Yeah, well, and they've got this pairing here with Hasbro, who also owns Wizards, but they also published the current version of Vampire the Masquerade and have been doing an excellent job with that.
Yeah.
And then they offer board
Good
games
Lord,
and
they
card
own
games as
everything
well. Well, they've got some good
Hey,
stuff. So they've come up a little bit from where they used to be. They're not quite indie, um, but there's still a lot of people that don't know about the different things that they publish. So,
Oh, I was thinking more that Hasbro owns everyone.
oh no, Hasbro does own everyone. Yeah, they're like the empire.
So much for no monopolies. Huh?
Oh
Um,
yes.
does anyone in the chat have any questions? I want to make sure that Hunter has plenty of time for his, and we're
So
not.
the one thing I will say, it's to Ultra's point, it's definitely a little more rules heavy, a little bit more on the learning curve side of things to run the game. But as far as something where you can sit down with almost any audience, any of the current Essence 20 offerings, you're going to find somebody who's going to be able to understand that. They're going to connect with those different properties, and you'll be able to maybe introduce somebody to the hobby for the first time and get them into showing up all the time, scheduling conflicts.
Good luck.
But yeah, but
Yeah,
it's just
play
one of
what
those
you
things
love.
like yeah, having that outlet where you can find something you connect with. Because I mentioned this last time, I run a lot of cyberpunk, I do Star Wars Saga Edition and Vampire the Masquerade. I like these sort of darker stories, things with a little bit more depth to them. um, but I understand where people need to have something that they have fun with, right? It's a game. Not everybody wants to go cast fireball, it seems. Uh, so, just to be able to offer those things, particularly where we go and interface with the public a lot in these event games, has been a huge benefit for us. And then Essence 20 really is kind of neat, where you just tell somebody that you can be a pony that's a you can be, you can be a transformer that's a pony that's also a Power Ranger that's fighting Cobra with GI Joe, and they go it's a lot of fun. So it's been a cool system to try to look into and work with.
cool.
Excellent.
It's like
Thank you
My
very
Little
much.
Pony in disguise.
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate you doing this so last minute.
Hey, I've got
Um,
a shelf full of these, so anytime you need to check out a cool system or you want to talk about the ins and outs, that is what we do. It's what we're here for. So if you are interested, you can follow us up. Best place right now is YouTube at I Want to Be a GM. You can hook up with our Discord server, make faces at me. You know how it goes.
yes, Eraserhead has been posting your YouTube a
Oh, thank
bunch,
you,
so
Eraserhead. Mhm.
Mhm.
he's the super mod. All right, Hunter. Thank you for being patient. You're up.
No problem. And I apologize. I've been yawning so much. My job is that starts at 5 in the morning, so I've been up since like 3:30. So, but it's like I'm here and I'm doing this, so I'm not. No regrets. And so the game I'm talking about is, like I said, beginning is going to be City of Mist, and this was basically my very first TTRPG I ever got into took when I got stuck in the house during 2019, because I started like way late in TTRPGs. Like I was about 2019, I would have been like my mid or late 20s at the time, and this was just popped on my social media, and I liked the idea that it was modern day, but you can kind of just throw in kind of like the time period whatever you want. Like my current campaign I'm running with this system, it takes place post the Vietnam War, so it's like that late 70s kind of almost early 80s feel to it. So I've been running that, and it's actually been really good trying to play with the history in that game. But in City of Mist, so you're just in a city. It's not really specific on like what city you're in, so you can kind of just kind of throw it wherever it is. You can have it where you live, you can have it somewhere else. Doesn't matter. And what you are is in the city, there's this thick purple mist that kind of just surrounds the entire city. But what this mist does, it hides everything that could be considered supernatural and paranormal. And in this city, there are people with powers, and they're called rifts. And what a rift is, and I will share this character for example. This is one of the pre-gen characters from the City of Mist game. This is Scarlet, and she is the rift of Little Red Riding Hood. She's also a monster hunter, and so when you this is the main artwork of it, and then when you flip it around to the back, what you see here, they have themes. The purple ones are mythos themes. The white ones are logos themes. The mythos is the powers that you get from your mythology. So, like, she has certain powers from being Little Red Riding Hood. And then the logos is how you live out through your everyday life. And so literally, if hold on, let me look at this again. Yeah, if you look in her Red Hood Mythos tag, which is the red coat that she wears, that's her relic, because that's a theme, because you have themes in the game, and they're all sorts of different. And I'll get that here in probably a second. She can literally just pull weapons of any kind just out of her hood because she's a monster hunter. And this is just one of the pre-gen characters. Like, I have a whole bunch right here. I'm not going to go through every one of them. This is just to kind of show off and explain. Hold on, am I even? Okay, I want to make sure I wasn't muted. It got really quiet on my end for a second. And so when you actually go about making these, so again, it's a Power by the Apocalypse based system. So you're rolling you can either roll 2d6, or what I like what the creators did, they have their d12 dice, but they're basically double d6s. So there's two of each number on each side, and they have these little logos on here. Hold on, to represent the 6. So you have logos, mythos, and so they're just double. Hold up, am I muted?
No,
Or-
he was making a joke about the fact that he
Oh.
liked the character.
Oh, okay. I got completely confused for a second there. I was like, when I don't hear anyone, I'm like, is everyone hear me? Is there anyone out there? So,
No,
but when
he's just making jokes about the fact that he really likes the character.
if you all have any questions, don't be afraid to kind of speak up in the middle of the talking, because I can literally talk about this game for hours on end, because this is my first love, I call it, of TTRPGs, because this is what I still go back to and will look through to this day. So, and I'll show here. So one of the themes, when you come to making themes, so it's kind of hard to show, but all your themes have questions that you will answer. You have power tags and you have weakness tags. And this is how it kind of differs from how Power by the Apocalypse usually works, is instead of having a stat to add, what you will do is, so you will have, let me think, I'm trying to remember, you have 3 power tags for each of your 4 themes and 1 weakness tag. And so what you do is you basically, it has set moves. So like you have investigate, changing the game, hit with all you got, just different move sets like a normal Power by the Apocalypse game. And what you do then is you look at your themes and you say, how many power tags can I apply to this move I now have to do? And you add all those power tags to your 2d6 roll. So let's say, like it shows on here for Scarlet, for example, she has attack from the shadows for like a tag combo she could do. So she combines her surprise attack and her conjure hunting weapon tags to give them what's called a power of 2 to her roll. So I just rolled a 2d6 and I add 2 to that roll. However, how the weakness tags come in play is that's mostly kind of like a Master of Ceremonies mechanic, which is Master of Ceremonies is the GM of the game, or the players can incur those weakness tags, because weakness tags also are how you gain experience for your themes. So every time a weakness tag comes into play, you get an attention, it's called, and every time you get 3 attention on the theme, you can level up that theme. So you're not leveling up your character yourself, but all your themes can level up in different ways. But you can also take what's called fades in your themes, and that leads you to where you could possibly lose those themes. Like you can outright just lose an entire theme, and you have to replace it with the opposite. So if you lose a mythos, you replace it with a new logos. If you lose a logos, you replace it with a new mythos. Am I making sense so far, or am I just speaking to the wind?
all I can think of is in Inside Out, when they have the memory, the core memories, and like she can lose the things that are defining points of her personality.
Yeah, because that's kind of what if I look at let me pull up the different logos themes that are in here, because
Like,
basically,
I'm trying to imagine Little Red Riding Hood losing her cloak. Like she kind of stops being Little Red Riding Hood at that point.
okay, but that's actually a thing that can happen. You have sleepers, which are basically people in the city that have no connection to the mythos whatsoever in this city. So it's kind of like being a muggle in Harry Potter. You don't know there's wizards out there. The sleepers in City of Mist, you don't know the Rifts people exist. So the mist hides all this active power from you. Then you have the Rifts, but then you have what's called avatars. And avatars are the people who just completely give in to their mythos. And they are now kind of like the living embodiment of that mythos. Like there's an avatar in one of the kind of starter games that is literally a mafia boss. That's Hades, and he runs an he runs a restaurant called the Persephone.
The
So is
fact that
there?
the fact
Oh, go
that it's a
ahead.
restaurant entertains me. I don't know why. Like if it had been a bar or something, I somehow would not have been quite as surprised. But the restaurant does feels very Italian mafia.
Of the two that you mentioned, is that the main um, types? You've either got the sleepers or the avatars. Is there anyone in between?
That's the Rifts people. Those are the people you play as. So
Oh,
you,
okay.
yeah. So sleep. So when you, so basically how it works is if you were to lose your final Mythos tag, you will only have 3 Logos tags left, and then you are a sleeper, and you are completely oblivious to all the stuff going on. And then if you lose all your Logos tags, you still have 3 Mythos tags left. You don't gain a 4th one, but you are now basically the embodiment of the Avatar. So it's this big balance of the game as well, where you're not only trying to, because it's basically a kind of a mystery noir cinematic type game, because you're this ragtag bunch of people usually most of the time, and you're trying to solve whatever mystery or going on that's happening in your city. But it's also this interpersonal struggle that's happening throughout, where you're trying to balance your humanity with your mythos. So those two are also constantly battling each other depending on the game you're playing.
It sounds very cool.
Oh, I love it. I could talk about this for so long just because of all the stories I've been able to tell with this game. Like my very first game that I ever ran was a 6 month, a 6 month campaign that I had the big bad guy that they face at the end was the Slender Man himself, and it was a bunch of just different horror, folklore type culture monsters. Because there was also, I had Siren Head, the Jigsaw puppet, a Wendigo. I reskinned Lady Demetrescu from the Resident Evil game to be a bad guy in the game too, and so it was just really fun, just kind of playing with all those, and then just seeing what the characters can come up with. Because you can basically make any kind of character with powers. Like I allow my players, like if they want to take Superman from the comic book and make use his powers for like their mythos, go ahead and do it. I've made so many different characters, and I have artwork of them on my phone, that because I took like the Death Wolf from the Puss in Boots movie, and I turned him into a City of Mist character because I thought that was such a cool. I really liked him as a character itself.
Did you see the original Sin City movie?
I've never seen Sin City.
Ugh. That's really what this is kind of reminding me of. That you have people that are, I mean, supposedly just regular humans, and yet manage to take huge amounts of abuse, and it's this very noir, black and white,
Yeah, because
mysterious kind of thing, and you're not really sure how anything connects to anything else because everything seems shrouded in shadows.
The first place my mind went was the Fable series.
Yeah. Well,
it does take a
but
lot of inspiration from
So
Fable. You are not entirely off put of that, because like one of Scarlett's her part of her story is constantly having to fight against the big bad wolf.
right. So
So
and
you're not too
tell me a
far
little bit
off.
more about the storytelling aspects of the system. Is
S-
there particular themes or threads that you would expect to find in a City of Mist story, or is it a little bit more free form and sort of up to you to explore?
So when it comes to the storytelling aspect, like when you're trying to like tell the mystery of what's going on in the game you're running, it uses this method called the iceberg method. So there's like multiple ways of entry to the mystery. So you give them like several different options that could all kind of like either connect to each other, or they all connect, and it just keeps on going up and up and up until you reach the tip of that iceberg, which is like the final scenario. Like, oh, all this leads to the mystery. And so, like, well, you can have like multiple things going on. Like, there's something happening like on this side of town, but then there's also something over here. But yet they can both go to like another part of the story. So everything almost ties in together in one way or another. But it's also free forming in a sense that it's very open to how the characters get that clue or get to that next point.
Do you find a lot of pre-generated or sort of module stories that are available for somebody who's new to the system to get a flavor or an idea for what's supposed to be the City of Mist?
So they do. So the creators, Son of Oak Studios, that create Say Mist, they actually have a really good starter set that gives you
Mm.
pre-generated characters and an adventure to go with it. But there's also they're very big. The community itself they have their own garage on Drive Thru RPG. Everyone makes all sorts of different adventures and characters and all that. So it's not so you can ease. So it's not hard to just find just different adventures you want to run. And then they also have I have this book right here. Give me a second. This is the game I've been running that's kind of post Vietnam. It's an entire campaign book. It's called Knights of Pain Town. And it's 9 cases that tie into a 10th and final mystery case. And it gives you like all the stuff. Like, I don't want to spoil too much of it in case anyone wants to play it. So,
Yeah, no spoilers, because I am
yeah.
definitely like hitting up
So,
bookstores as soon as I get
yeah.
off this.
So, but this is what the iceberg method kind of looks like.
Okay.
Is you have these intro points kind of right at the top, and then they all just kind of, when one way or another, will connect until it goes all the way down to the final, like the answer to it all for that case. And then it'll just kind of give you like little details about like how you get to that, like stuff that happens, because again, you also have the rolling mechanic. That's kind of like the investigate roll. If you're trying to find like the clues to what's going on, you got to make sure you roll well enough. And that's actually part of what I love about City of Mist also is how creative players can get with their tags and how creative they can be, like adding those power tags to the roll. Because one of the big things in City of Mist is you cannot use the same tags like twice in a row for the same roll. The game expects you to get creative to figure out what are you going to do that's not the same as before. It's very creative in wanting players to think about how to use their tags in creative ways.
How does it deal with failure if you're doing, because that's an issue with all kind of clue based, whether it's the game itself or just a particular um, setting you're running or something.
Okay, so Powered by the Apocalypse, so it works kind of normal, where it's like if you get the 12 or plus, it's a complete success. A 7 through 9 is like a mixed success, so you get a complication with that. And then like a 6 or below is just an absolute fail. And if it does get to the point where it's like everyone's kind of failing, nothing's going on, that's why I just throw in a complication that will lead them to like that next clue or that next scene,
Okay.
usually. Because I had in one campaign, I was running a late St. Patrick's Day one shot that I took inspiration from the Leprechaun horror movies from. So this Leprechaun was going around the city just killing people left and right, and it was all part of this big old like city conspiracy plan that was happening. And they went to the scene. They all failed their investigate rolls, so they had no clue what was going on. So I had the Leprechaun suddenly appear, make constructs of himself, and attack the party. That's how I got them to kind of go ahead. And that one player he was failing so badly every roll that he could. It wasn't on purpose, but the dice were not liking him for that game for a while.
There are people and times that it just doesn't cooperate. I ran a game 2 months ago, I think, where, I'm not exaggerating, including my rolls, something like 25% of the rolls were critical failures.
That's brutal.
Oh,
Yeah.
it got really hard to like figure out cinematic ways to talk about it because everyone was failing, the NPCs included.
Yeah, I actually have all the books right me because they did a sale on them a while back, so I have all the books right here. So it's
sweet.
really cool. Hold on, I'm trying to put my characters down so I don't drop them. So there's also the Master of Ceremonies Toolkit, and this is actually a really cool book because it gives you like all the because in the city you have different districts, and it lists in those districts like an adventure that they can do, some like main characters. But what I really like about this book is, if I can find it here in a second, is it actually can show you how to make what they call dangers, which are the enemies or monsters in the game. So it literally has like you have like a templates, and then if you want to power up with some sort of mythos power, it gives you what you can add on to it basically. And so, like, let's say for example, let me find a quick danger profile here. Like you say, like here for example, you have the cat burglar stat block. And that's just kind of the main one you start off with. But then you say, well, maybe there's something about this cat burglar that's really interesting. And if I can find where all those mythos things are here really quick. Let's say he is that cat burglar is also like, let's say here, a sorcerer or a witch. It has, I'm trying to, I sorry if I'm not too close to it or anything. And so it shows me like all this different stuff that I can add to make it like more of a threat to the party. So it's not just a normal cat burglar. Like, let's say it's a cat burglar that happens to be like Morgan Le Fay or whatever. Let's say that, for example.
So that sounds kind of neat. That book in particular seems like it would be a must-have for anybody who really wants to dive deeper into the system. Not so much that you can't do it without it, but it provides you that extra support to do it well.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you like really had to have to run a good game.
Honestly, because honestly, when the very first time I ran this game, I didn't even have the MC tool, the Master Ceremonies toolkit. I was just I was just coming up with everything at the top of my head, and I was coming up with what damage they would do at the top of my head as the game was going along. All I had to go with at the time was just kind of the player's guide to help the players make their characters. Because again, it's this whole process where you have to like answer questions to get your power tags. But now, if you don't want to do that, there's this expansion book right here. It's called Shadows and Showdowns that provides extra themes, extra little adventures and areas you can do. But there's also in here, if I can find the right page for it really quick, it has a uh, rapid character generation tool in here. So that way you're not spending, if you don't want to like spend like hours on end or however long it takes to make a character, it provides you a template to make these like different characters. And so you can decide like how strong you want them to be, and then like kind of what tags that go with it. Like for example, in this, say your legendary archetype or your mythos is that of a king or a queen, and it gives some examples. And so if he was just slightly a mythos, the only thing he would have would be a theme called Dominating Presence. And if I go to the Dominating Presence on here, it has power tags and weakness tags that I can just randomly pick from myself instead of having to answer multiple questions to try to come up with those power tags myself.
So there's a less crunchy version and a greater crunchy version, depending on how in depth you want to get.
Exactly, yes. And of course, like I've had players use rapid character creation and go in depth from there, where it's like you kind of like have the idea and then you go off and make kind of the story from that point. I've had players do it both ways, where they come up with the story beforehand or then they come up with the story afterhand.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely. I don't know about the rest of the chat, but I'm definitely taking a deeper dive into that one. That is very much right up my alley.
One question more I had for you, Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about how the party comes together. Like Power Rangers is kind of straightforward, right? You got some big giant head in a tube that just abducts children. So what does it look like when you form a party in City of Mist?
So the usual kind of way it kind of has it set up in the game is that the party may or may not have been working together for like a short time now. So it's this ragtag bunch that it's kind of like you're almost like kind of like you're the neighborhood watch of the city, and you're just constantly like looking out for what's going on in the background of the city. Or like some of them, like there's some of the pre-gen characters are actually like on the police force, so there may be police officers. So you may be starting off as police officers. The current game I'm running, I had a third person, like kind of like that was on the sidelines, bring them in all together. And how I ran my very first campaign was they were all kidnapped and woke up in this forest all together, and now they're trying to work together to figure out what the heck's going on. That was how I started my very first campaign. It's like you're kidnapped and you wake up in the forest.
So that's kind of so you've got your standard sort of party challenges. Um, I imagine that based on your historical era of theming, that can change as well. You mentioned your post Vietnam game, the late '70s, early '80s kind of stuff. You're gonna have a different mix of what's going on in the city than, say, if you were to do something that was more maybe fantasy or even sci-fi.
It depends because I mean, you could easily take stuff from like say like someone read a book, an H.G. Wells book, and like got was War of the Worlds. Like you can like I've seen like people have like they're like the living embodiments of like a book that they read. So I was trying to I know there's an example, but I just cannot remember at the top of my head right now what it was.
And then how does combat come about? Is it because we've talked a lot about the investigation and sort of working through the unfolding story? Obviously, conflict is going to be part of any game. What's that look like?
So combat, it's still kind of that narrative focus. There's no like rolls for initiative or anything. It's just kind of like depending on situation. Like if whatever enemy I have gets to jump on them, then my opponents will attack first, and then they have to, and then because the players do all the rolling, I don't do any rolling on my side unless I'm doing like a fate roll for something or other. Usually, the players do all the rolling, and so they have face danger rolls, which is a move to like if you're trying to avoid or counter an opponent, but the players all kind of get to decide what do we want to do, who makes the first move in the fight. So it's very much still that narrative, free flowing kind of rhythm that goes even with the combat.
Very cool.
I I'd have to look into that. I've never been crazy on games where the GM never rolls anything because I think it doesn't allow the players to get quite as immersed when they're worrying about numbers all the time. Like even Numenera, like I roll for stuff in Numenera that technically I'm not supposed to. That and the fact that I figured out in Numenera that it actually the statistics went against the party if they were rolling against everything all the time. But mainly it's just that I like to like let them stay in the role play and out of the numbers part as much as I can. So
Huh,
Yeah,
that's
I do
interesting.
rolls for like NPCs usually. Like if I have an NPC with a party and they're helping out with something, I will usually do like a flat roll for them. I don't have like full on stat blocks for them usually because that's not usually what the game has you do. It's mostly stats for like enemies and their abilities, but nothing else for like helpful NPCs. So
well, I mean, I've never found it hard to just tweak the game a little. I mean, almost everything I run, I end up tweaking anyway. So,
hmm that's true.
but like I said, the setting is great. The other thing all I can think of is if you can do any time, and a lot of this is based on fairy tales. It would be great to run it in a Germanic village and have like the original fairy tales with the way they actually ended, which is generally much more gruesome than the Disney version we know now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
so
that's
I've
again where I went to the comic series Fable, where they cross over from their fantasy worlds into modern day New York. They've got an apartment building then and some other things in New York, and their sheriff is the big bad wolf. Um, so it'd be interesting to see some of that, even like a historical sort of setting, because some of the ones they get really interesting. Donkey Girl. At some point, there's an owl that eats somebody's face, so it can be it can be a little darker if you go Grimm's fairy tales.
yeah.
Yeah, very
Although
much. Um, I do want to wrap things up a little bit because I want to make sure everybody gets to plug their stuff, just in case we have one of those random Tomby has insomnia and decides to stream at what would be 2 a.m. his time. In which case, the first I will know about it is when this thing triggers and says this stream is shutting down in 10 seconds. So I want to make sure that everybody has time to plug their stuff. Is there anything else in the next like 2 minutes that's important about this game, or any other questions that other people have from the chat? Okay.
I mean, I basically like that's my. Again, I could just keep going on, but that's kind of like the short and sweet kind of main points behind City of Mist. I have an absolute adoration and love for the game. I'm friends with the creator, and I will even, and I will always try to make time to run this game if I ever get the chance to, just because I love, especially the open creativity that you can do with this game is what I love about it the most.
Yeah. Um, and I really like what Grandpappy said is about as long as I can play a heavily flawed, entertaining character. I really like people willing to do and systems willing to allow for flaws as well as heroic aspects, and it sounds like this is really good for that. So, all right. Okay, well, let's go back around the circle. Night Harrow, if you want to tell us where we can find you, what you're doing this week.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Homebrew Tabletop. Hence the shirt here. And the main thing I do while I love GURPS, what I actually do on the channel is I mostly right now review TTRPGs and board games of various types. I do some other interesting videos, like I've done a talk about strength in TTRPGs. I love mechanics of games, and so if you're a little bit more nerdy that way, although understanding that that not all games need to be super complicated and just playing something because it's fun, but reviews are probably right now the biggest part of what I do and what I'm looking to do in the near future. So if you're looking for something, I don't have very much up, but I'm working through it. So we'll get there.
Well, I really liked the videos I found of yours, so that was that was the reason you got. I had not realized until you mentioned the T-shirt that
Oh
was
yeah,
in fact
yeah.
a homebrew. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
T-shirt.
I just wear these now. Honestly, I had to get one made, so I got a bunch made. Now this is, yeah.
All right, Jester.
So I am Jester Boris with I Want to Be a GM and Griffin's Keep. We can be found over at YouTube. We're going to be starting next month our monthly series. We're going to be doing allies and antagonists this year, talking a little bit about how to create bad guys with depth, build those stories out, similar to what Ultra found in his system, where you've got more than a two-dimensional bad guy, something that you can really antagonize. Make him a recurring character without always being sort of goofy. The same thing with allies. Sometimes NPCs don't get the love they need, and they are there to help build out your world setting. So we're going to have a little bit of discussion with that starting again March, third weekend of March. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. That's how good I'm doing. But if you happen to be in the Springfield, Missouri area, you can always find us as well. We'll be at some of the local conventions, game stores, and things around this area, trying to help our community. As always, we advocate that you support your local game stores. If you want those cool places to hang out, they need some of your support, so go check them out.
Awesome, thank you. And Hunter.
Yes, once again, I go by the Ultra American TTRPGer. You can find me on X at Ultra TTRPGR. You can also find me on YouTube and Rumble at the Ultra American TTRPGer, where I talk about TTRPGs, the culture war, and sometimes they both collide into whatever topic I feel like talking about at the time. So be warned if you like to hear my spicy opinions. This is your warning for if you follow me, because I am very much an open book with a lot of what I talked about. And also, if you want to listen to me running the Knights of Paintown campaign in post-Vietnam War, look up on your preferred podcasting platform for the show Nails and Kneecaps, which is my City of Mist game where I run this with a bunch of other crazy folks like me. And I just release the episodes whenever I can. There's no set date because it's like life kicks me in the butt sometimes. And so I just get to it whenever I can. But whenever they're out, I usually will say something about it. And you can listen to, I think I have 4 episodes of it out now. So again, preferred podcasting platform, just look for Nails and Kneecaps is the name of the show.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate you having been here. I am the Eclectic Goat. I am here on Discord and on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, yes. Pluto is also still a planet. I am under the Eclectic Goat under all of those things. Next week, let's see. I actually have to look at a calendar because next week is kind of busy. On Sunday, I will be on Sammy Three Peats in other news. Um, Monday, I am actually not streaming for the first time in a while. Next Wednesday, I will be on Tomby's Chinwag at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and then I will be back here for Slice and Dice at 6. And I also expect that I will have a video out on underappreciated 90s television, the Tech Edition. So hopefully we'll be getting lots done next week. I hope to see you all there. Apparently someone was subscribed to Jester and did not know it. So thank you very much. I hope everyone has a great night, and I hope we will see you back next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Ja picked us up last time. Thanks for that.
Thank you for having me.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure, heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. They're the guys for you. We've got time for you. Come and join the crew. Here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.